Okay, so I'll give it a go and then you guys can kind of follow suit. Here we go. My name's Maxine. I'm the CEO of Pick My Brain. I'm a founder, an economist, and environmentalist. I know a lot about startups, knowledge, commerce, and connecting people. And I am here today because I want to better understand the revolution that is currently happening in Iran from an Iranian's perspective. Farinaz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Farinaz Lari. I'm a world kickboxing champion. I know a lot about kickboxing as a sport, health, fitness, but also a lot about hard work and also women's rights, especially in sports. I'm here because this subject, what's happening right now, it touches my heart, and I want more people to be aware of it. And basically, the more people know about it, hopefully we can shed more light on it and help the people who are actually fighting for their lives to make the change in this world.
Amazing. Soushant.
Thanks, Max, for giving us the time to discuss this. My name is Soushant. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Sway. Sway is a platform for decentralized decision-making. We help DAOs and organizations collect ideas and turn those ideas into decisions through a collective process. I'm a lot of things, a dad, multiple founder, and a policy analyst, former policy analyst. I know a lot about the issue that we're talking about today because I used to be a nuclear non-proliferation researcher covering Iran for 3 years. I was writing policy memos for the Department of Foreign Affairs and various institutions across Canada and the US, trying to inform them on what we were seeing happening in Iran, what the motivations of the government was for pursuing nuclear technology, and what are different nuanced policies we could approach for intervening or changing their path. Mostly I'm here because I've been a community organizer and a human rights activist because of the things that have happened over the past 14 years in Iran. Initially in 2009 with the Green Revolution and Green Movement. So I just want to share with you guys what I'm hearing and learning from friends, family that are there and here trying to cross the finish line this time.
You're on mute.
Classic. Over to you guys. Who's in the room? I'd love 3 to 5 volunteers to tell me a little bit about yourself and why you chose to spend your time today coming to this event. I'll let you guys decide who wants to, or you can just raise your hand and
I'm ready.
Sure, Dean, jump in.
So, founder, president of Bridgepoint Coaching and Strategy Group. I'm a fellow at Harvard's Institute of Coaching, and I'm a brain picker. I'm proud of that. I got it displayed over here. I know a lot about obeying your instinct and reducing second guessing. And why am I here? Because I had the privilege to pick Farinaz's brain. And so I got to hear her story. And when I knew that she was coming on here, I knew I could trust the source and I wanted to hear it.
I love it. Trust the source. Dan.
Hello. My name is Dan Bennett. I'm a founder of Video for Entrepreneurs. I know a lot about story development and helping entrepreneurs look and sound great on camera. And I'm here because I love the connections that I make at these events, as well as on the platform itself. And I always learn something brand new every time I'm here. So
I love that. Mission achieved. Sabian.
Make sure I'm not muted. Hello, my name is Sabian. I'm the CEO of You Get It. I'm a communicator and I'm a world and story builder. I know a lot about gaming, tech, UX design, human experience design, and cinematic music. I'm here because every new person is full of potential, and it's so amazing. Every person I've met here since I came here the first time, yes, every single person I have met here, that's at least 7 people, has been a great conversation and value exploding. So anyone who wants to chat with anything about anything, reach out to me on Pick My Brain.
Thank you. It's so nice to have you. Any women want to share? Anyone? I got two more. Hands up. I'm going to call on you, women. Rena, I'm calling on you.
I was just going to raise my hand. I'll take my hand off for that one. Hi, I'm Rena. I don't remember the prompts. I am a heart-centered end-of-life education and end-of-life educator and planner. I know a lot about that. I know a lot about how to think about the fact that we are mortal beings and use that to our advantage so that we can, sorry about the noise, live with purpose and with intention. What was the other prompt? Why I am here. I am here. I love learning from everybody who shows up, and I'm particularly interested in the topic of today, anything to do with women's rights. I want to learn more, especially from people who have an inside perspective. So I'm really grateful to our guests and to everybody.
Amazing. So good to have you. Does one other person want to introduce themselves? Britta, you're smiling.
Nice, thanks. I'm Britta, and I'm intuitive business and marketing coach consultant. I help small business owners to use their journey of entrepreneurship as a spiritual journey. And I'm here because I recently joined, and I love to connect more with the community and get to know more people. And I didn't know the topic of today, but it sounds fabulous. So I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Well, it's so nice to have you guys. Thank you so much for introducing yourself and sharing again the why you are here. I am now going to share the why as to why we're spending time hosting these events. And then we're going to dive into the interview. So again, today's agenda, I'm just going to talk about the why, the mission, and the vision of Pick My Brain. We're going to jump into a 30-minute interview where I ask Farinaz and Soushiant a series of 5 questions and just allow them to share their perspective with us today. Then we're going to jump into a breakout session and exchange with one another about what we learned, what we're feeling, any reflections that you had based on the conversation that you're going to hear. And then we'll come back as a group again and just share some high-level group takeaways that happened in each of our breakout rooms. And then I'm going to have one call to action for everyone that is in attendance today. So really quickly, our why at Pick My Brain, we believe that conversations lead to innovation, empathy, creativity, wellness, perspective, opportunity, and understanding. And so we're on a mission at Pick My Brain to inspire and facilitate 1 million conversations between the world's people. We're at about 10,000, so we've got a long way to go. And these events, help us keep facilitating them, again, because we see what benefits they unlock. Our vision is really simply this, kind of what Sabian described, that when people have conversations and when we hit 1 million conversations, the world's people are going to consciously and collectively be expanding and synthesizing and understanding one another at a deeper level. The problem that we're solving is it's not always easy to have these really deep and meaningful conversations. It's not easy to ask an Iranian or find someone from a different country or culture or demographic to pick their brains, to ask them about their stories, to sit down and have a meaningful conversation. And so we wanted to, at Pick My Brain, build a solution for that. And so we built a marketplace where you can browse and book and have conversations with thousands of diverse people who have given you permission to do so. The dream is that this
here it comes.
Someone's playing with their dog. I think that's you, Mary.
Sorry.
That's okay.
There's a mute.
All good, all good. The dream here at Pick My Brain really is that our brand, Pick My Brain's logo, becomes synonymous with everyone in the world who is open, clearly, to having a conversation with you, so you're not scared to dive in really quickly with them. They've given you that permission. And we've found that by giving people permission to do this, we're starting to unlock all sorts of new kinds of opportunities from people that have this crossover between a knowledge exchange, a social exchange, and an emotional exchange. We also believe there's never been a better time to meet the world's people. A lot is going on globally and politically. We just came out of a pandemic. there's no more borders. And so, yeah, that's kind of where we're at in the setting of the scene. So now I'm going to jump into the interview, the kind of meat and vegetables of today's session. And we're going to turn it over to Farinaz and Sousiant to share their perspective with us today. So I'll stop sharing my screen. Now we're all set up on the Y. And all right, I'm going to start. People, there we go. Farinaz, I'm going to ask you first. What is going in Iran today and how is it impacting you personally?
What's happening is women are fighting for the right to express themselves freely. So they're not, let me start by saying that people are fed up with how the government is being run and how basically how much they're trying to improve and how hard they work. It's not necessarily benefiting them because of the country's political situation. This is not the case. The case is 70% of the population of Iran is under the age of 24. And these young people are at a stage where they need to thrive. And they feel like they can't, if they can't be themselves, if they can't be free, they can't improve, and they're sick of it. And how it impacts me is I come from that background because as a woman in kickboxing, being in the national team of Iran, I was forced to wear hijab because it was the law of the country. But how they were basically forcing it was, of course, I was born into it. So I assumed that's how it is. I started basically traveling abroad and competing abroad. And then that's when I realized that basically what they're forcing me to wear is embarrassing. And I felt self-conscious. But at the same time, because it was constantly being said that all these people went to war for us and they saved the country for us, and the least that we could do is cover our hair, I felt that was the least I could do for all those people who gave their lives for us to have a country. But I was born at a time where the war between Iran and Iraq was still happening. And I felt as a citizen, that was something that I must do. But these younger generation, they haven't experienced that. They haven't seen that. And this is the time where social media, news, every knowledge is basically at the tip of your fingers. They have access to true knowledge, where what we had was what was given to us, and they're fed up with it. They're done with it. They want to be living how they want to live. They want to be like how they want to be, and I understand that because they have the right to be who they want to be.
Wow. Can you repeat what percent of the population is under 24?
70% of the population is under the age of 24. And what also is really amazing is 97% of the population of Iran are literate, and 60% of them are university graduates. Wow. And 30% of that 60% are have either studied their master's or PhD. So these people are highly educated, knowledgeable people, and young.
I did not know that. Did you guys know that? Did anyone here know that? Feel free to write notes. I love writing notes in the chat. That sets such a context up, because I don't know any other country that 70% of the population is under 24. That is remarkable. And that 67% are university graduates. Why are we not leaning on Iran to know how to, get those rates of education in our countries as well? Incredible. And when did you, just a few follow-up questions, when did you, as a woman in Iran, feel like, can you speak to when the transition in your mind started to happen, where you didn't want to do this anymore, where you realized that it wasn't fulfilling a previous you felt like responsible to wear that for those who fought the country? When did that transition to be like, no, that was not the case? What age? How did it happen?
I actually have never told anybody this. It's a little bit embarrassing. Basically what happens is at the age of 9, you are forced to wear hijab when you go out of your house and when you are in school and when you're in public. And that doesn't mean that you believe in it. My family wasn't religious. It was just because it was the law. And then once we basically traveled, we were okay because, we weren't religious, so we weren't wearing hijab. And that was not a problem. Even when I started competing as an Iranian athlete abroad, I basically accepted the responsibility of being an Iranian athlete to wear the hijab. And that is a whole different story of how I had to meet the president and get his permission. And it was all a whole big fiasco, but that's another story. But basically the first time that I felt like I'm fed up with it was when the king of Saudi Arabia decided that he basically allowed the women to have optional hijab. And they have Mecca, they are the Muslims, they are the actual Muslims. And we thought that, okay, these guys are, all about hijab, so we're basically following their lead to be proper Muslims. And the first time I think I saw an Arab woman without hijab, I was so angry at her. And because I was younger, I felt like my anger was towards her. And in my head, I was thinking, oh, she's a bad Muslim. And I had to really go deep and think within myself and understand that, okay, no, she is free. She is whoever she wants to be in a free world. And that's beautiful. And my anger is because my sisters in my country can't have that. That's why I'm angry. My anger is not towards her. My anger is towards the government who's repressing my women.
Wow. Amazing. Does anyone want to ask one follow-up question before I ask the same question to Sousiant to get a different perspective, or any comments? No.
I'm just flabbergasted.
Yeah, me too. It's so potent to hear from someone's direct perspective what's going on. Like, it's just an entirely different feeling than when I read about it. I don't know if you guys are
I asked in the chat, and I'm just wondering, it's not like women don't get to go to school and everything, right? It's not like the Taliban or something, right? I mean, those numbers you gave of college graduates and masters, is that equal?
That's in Iran.
Or?
That's in Iran. Yes, the women in Iran can go to school, can go to university. They are separated and they are wearing hijab. It's a whole other story in sports, but for education, they can.
Ooh, we might have to come back to that question. It's a whole other story in sports. Wow. Okay, thank you so much.
I might add, it also is commercial. So one time I did a presentation in Bahrain it was a Saudi British bank, and the men and women were split in the audience, and there was a wall between them. Like, and these were all co-workers. I mean, it's not like this is all co-workers in the bank with a wall between them. And I actually made a point of asking, am I allowed to talk to the women? Like, I don't want to get in trouble. Like, can I look at them? Like, is that, I mean, because when I do presentations, I walk and talk and I'm looking at the audience, and it's odd. I mean, this is two groups of coworkers who were split by a wall. Kind of weird.
That is I did not know any of that. Okay, I'm gonna bring up Sousiant and ask the exact same question, and we'll come back to Farinaz. So Sousiant, what is going on in Iran and how is it impacting you personally?
First, I just want to tip my hat off to Farinaz and say so much respect to you for tolerating what you tolerated and for representing our country and our people with such pride. I'm so grateful to you. Sorry, it's been a very heavy few days for me, and for a lot of us in the community, just seeing the types of images coming out of the country. We're seeing a really beautiful uprising by proud and dignified young people. As Farinaz mentioned, people under the age of 24, mostly 16, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds in the streets. They're post-revolutionary, that they were born after the revolution, so they don't understand these ideals and this social order that's been imposed on them, nor can they compute how they can live in such a confined and suffocating environment when the rest of the world is moving in a different direction. So we've been seeing this. I mean, I saw this in 2009 when I began getting much more involved in organizing, the community and protest movements and things like this when the election crisis happened. It's a one-directional fight. There's hopeful people on the streets, but they're being slaughtered by ruthless, barbaric government and its police apparatus. And I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. It's like watching goldfish being shot by a fisherman. There's not much that we're able to do other than try to raise our voice, use every platform and tool we have at our disposal to share. This is our George Floyd moment, guys, and we're seeing it happen on a daily basis. Everyone, the world stood up in disbelief when a police officer knelt on this guy's neck for 9 minutes and suffocated him to death. These young girls are facing this on a daily basis. The brutality with which this entire protest movement started. Just imagine for a second, this 22-year-old girl comes to Tehran to visit her family, and she gets off of a minibus coming from the north of Iran, from Kurdistan. And her hijab, the thing that she puts on her hair is slightly kind of out of place, and her hair is kind of dangling a little bit out of it. And, this is grounds for getting into a lot of trouble. And this is what happened to her. There was this apparatus in the streets, that these thugs called the morality police, that roam the streets in these minivans, and they look for people that are disrespecting the morality and the piety of people. And they try to make examples out of these people. And she was unfortunately one of those people that they picked on. They grabbed her by her hair and threw her into the truck. She hit her head so hard in the back of this van that she had a concussion. And God knows what else happened to her after they took her away. They beat her so badly that she ended up going into a coma. And 2 days later, she passed away. This is what kicked off everything. Like, there is no video footage of what happened to her after the van incident, but we all know, we've seen this. Max, I moved here when I was 5 years old, and Iran was always sat in your heart and was a place that it's in your household. It's what you're eating, you're talking. It's all part of your life. But I really became aware of the inequality when in 2003, another Canadian individual, a woman named Zahra Kazemi, the exact same thing happened to her. She was a photojournalist working for the CBC or independently. I don't remember exactly, but She was taking pictures of Evin prison, which is the most notorious prison we have in Iran, where they take all the political prisoners. And a bunch of, shady police officers came and started questioning, what are you taking pictures for? Are you a spy, et cetera, et cetera. Took her into the prison, beat the living shit out of her. And she ended up going into coma and dying in Iran without any of us being able to do anything. It's not conceptual what's going on. It's not conceptual at all. Like, Farinaz probably has family there. I have a lot of family there. A lot of my cousins are still there, and my cousins' kids are now at an age where they're the university students that are going out, and they're in the streets, and they're worried for their life, but they can't tolerate what has been going on. So yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's what's happening, and that's what it means to me.
Yeah, I don't think I have any words. That's a lot. I don't know if everyone is feeling that. Like, yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I can't imagine what that feels like. And I just hope that by bringing us together and for a moment, getting the feelings from Sousiant and Farinaz, what they're emitting is like resonating hard in our hearts. Okay, I will come back to Farinaz. Next question is, historically, has anything like this happened before? Is this different? Is it the same? Could you set some context on, yeah, a little bit more of the history of Iran?
Ever since the Islamic Revolution, at the beginning of it, I wasn't born yet, but hijab was at the beginning not mandatory. And then gradually, the Ayatollahs started, adding more forces, being more strict, having punishments, forcing women to wear hijab as they moved on into the revolution. When I was born, we were towards the end of a war between Iran and Iraq. And that brought basically power to the Islamic Revolution because the people united in order to defend the country. So when I was born into a united country, a country that was built with blood of the younger men who went to war for it. So I did not experience the hate for suppression, basically. I was born into it and I was proud of it because of the war. As I grew up, the more I saw discrimination, especially because of a female athlete, I became more aware of the differences between the opportunities for male athletes and female athletes. And because I was fortunate to travel with family and also with the national team, I became more aware of what's happening. As time went by and as the presidents changed, and of course sanctions, people became poorer, I should say, with less opportunities and disrespected. And the more people got disrespected and devalued, the more fed up they become. I just want to share an experience of the first time I was caught by the morality police. And I'm just saying this just to give you a concept. I'm not trying to take away from what's happening to the women right now, because for me, living in Canada for the past 12 years, I can't even imagine how they are right now. But then I remember the first time I was basically, my hijab went back and my ponytail was out, I think, for a second, and I got pulled by a police and put down on the ground, and a pepper spray, I would say maybe like 5 inches away, my face was being sprayed on my face to the point of vomiting. And I remember him yelling, saying that I gave my lungs for you. I am 50% of the capacity of my lung is no longer working because of you. And that meant because he went to war, and he was basically, because of chemical gases, he lost 50% capacity of his lung. And I remember feeling shame. I felt like I let a hero down because he went to war for me, and I felt ashamed. And then after, they ask your parents to pick you up, and I remember my dad saying that I can't handle the stress of them taking you away, and I'm not, I can't do this anymore, so please don't make any trouble anymore. And I was like, okay, I can't make any more trouble because of these 2 reasons. But I'm saying that story because I am from that generation. But the new generation, what's happening right now, the 70% that are under the age of 24, they haven't seen war. They don't even know those previous stories and the presidents and the glory days and so on and so forth. They are born into the years of sanctions and internet censorship and everything being so expensive and not being able to afford traveling and buying things. So they have no respect for anything being forced on them. And I understand that. I absolutely understand that. And on top of that, what's happening to them is 100 times worse than what happened to me. For example, 3 days ago, there's this, it's actually all over internet right now. There's this girl who was 16 years old who was caught in the middle of the protests. She was killed, severely beaten. They refused to give her body to her parents for 2 weeks because she was raped. Her nose was broken, her skull was broken. So this is compared to a pepper spray. It's not even comparable. This is different, not just different because of how brutal they are attacking the population, but also different because these women are 1,000 times more brave than us, my generation, I mean. They are brave. They are being put down on a daily basis, and yet they rise again. They are different, and this is going to be different.
Do you think, what is causing the difference in the amount of conflict that is being put on the new generation? Is it because they're so free and that mentality that the brutality needs to match it? What was the shift from when you were young to the intensity that is happening right now? Why is it so intense?
When I was younger, there was still, the economy wasn't as bad. I should say, when I was going to university, our parents could still afford things. When they would say, please don't make trouble, you'd understand because they were your providers. But right now, their parents can't provide for them. There's no jobs for them. An average person cannot afford meat. An average family cannot afford electricity. That's how then this is the 3rd country with oil and gas, the 3rd top country with oil and gas. So they're not a poor country. They are rich in everything. So when I say it's different, it's because when you get to that point of when you have nothing to lose and you are extremely brave, and when you have that young fire, you can change the world. And now that it's not just a few of them, there's so many more of them.
Wow. That's a lot. Any other questions before I ask the same question to Sousiant? think probably everyone's feeling maybe similar to vibes that I'm feeling, just complete, I don't know, human turmoil, maybe. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if, so Maxine, you said revolution, which opened my eyes a bit. Do the two of you feel that a revolution has begun, like literally a revolution, like this, civil war, or not yet, or is it heading that way, or just opinions on that word, and is this a civil war in some regard?
I think it's best if Sousiant answer because he's a policy analyst. I am just a passionate person.
I love that. Okay, we'll pause that and bring Sousiant up. Thank you so much for sharing that, Farinaz. Okay, Sousiant, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Much better. Sorry, I've been being interviewed and all this stuff, and like the news and whatnot, and I can't really like let my guard down. So I felt a moment where I could let my guard down here. So
let it down.
Much appreciated.
There's no.
Yeah, the question around is this this is not a like a little protest movement by any measure that I've seen. So protests sort of ignited in 2009, following like the largest protests we've seen to date, ignited in 2009 following the election scandal, where the election was stolen away from the popular candidate. 3 million people came out into the streets of Tehran, and it spread to a handful of other provinces. There are 31 provinces in Iran in total. By today's measures, every single province in Iran has a protest movement going on because of what's been happening over the past 3 weeks. And it's no longer, the women on the front lines. This is a protest movement that encapsulates people that are fighting for equality of women and feminism and all this sort of stuff, as well as those that have been economically disparaged and set aside because of the conditions through which the country has been run. So under this unifying umbrella of Mahsa Amini, who's the name of the girl that I was mentioning to you, who was murdered, are a number of grieving, normal people that want a different system there. So in many ways, this is a revolution. People, whether it's successful or not is a different story, but people want wholesale change of the existing government here. This is no longer a request for reforms and things like this. Is it a civil war? No, it's not a civil war. The protesters don't have arms. They can't be, I don't know how they will be armed. And I don't know if that's the route that many of them will take, though they are defending themselves with man-made things, rocks, Molotov cocktails, things like this. People have a lot of hope in the army, which has traditionally been the most kind of nationalistic and proud institution of the country, to actually stand up for the people. And there have been some of the videos that I've been seeing are various army generals and officials, like high-level people, coming out on TikTok and believe it or not, TikTok and Instagram, recording these types of statements of like, we will stand with the people, our heart is with the people, this sort of stuff. So there are fractures happening. To answer your question as well, Max, the previous one, like why is the response so brutal in this case? It's so brutal if you don't consider the previous actions of this government. Like this is a standard playbook of how they've responded to any kind of attempt to demand reform from anybody. 2.5 years ago, Farinaz, beautifully kind of put this into perspective about the economic challenges facing the country. The sanctions, the loss of the JCPOA, which was the Iran deal, the nuclear agreement between 6 nations and Iran, the pairing up of that through Trump, the continued economic sanctions, the inflation, the utter destitute that people are in, led to people sort of rising up 2.5 years ago. The fuel subsidies were also cut, so fuel was increased by 2 times, and people just were like, man, I'm living off $400 a month. I haven't eaten meat in 6 months. How can I pay double for fuel? So they came out onto the streets. Do you know what they did to those people, Max? They slaughtered 1,500 people in 3 days, and they turned off the internet. They slaughtered so many people that they couldn't fit them into their morgues. They were putting them into coal trucks where we transport food. So the story that Farinaz mentions of this girl, Nika, I think her name was Nika, 17-year-old. Yeah, it's a very common story. So this regime has nowhere to run. This is why they're fighting so hard to hold on to the little bit of power they have left. So the brutality is going to be way worse than we've seen so far, in my opinion, if this is more and more successful. So just prepare ourselves is all I have to say.
Wow. Sabian, Winston, you have questions? I'll go Sabian first and then Winston.
Yeah, Sousiant, what are you seeing this revolution making the next step towards that will make the future brighter?
I don't want to speak like too much about what comes next, but I think that the common consensus is a democratic and secular government that comes into place. There are some factions outside of Iran, a very, very powerful faction outside Iran, which is the former Shah and his supporters, the former king of Iran. Usually it's like kind of the older generation that lived under the glory of his time, and they look back with nostalgia about what beauties and all this sort of stuff we had. So they believe that a return to that is appropriate, but frankly, their opinion doesn't matter. Neither does mine. Neither does Farinaz's, for all due respect. The only opinion that matters is the 80 million people that live in that country that are on the street risking their lives for the future that they want. So they, from what I hear, want a government that is secular and that is democratic, and let everyone compete for the seats or whatever that go into the house. So that gives me a lot of hope. And again, it's not inevitable. That it's not like right on the horizon that this is going to happen. That we may turn into Libya, or there may be other things, but it's absolutely worth fighting for and for attempting, because the impact of this working, this is another thing that I think a lot of people maybe minimize. If this revolution is successful, what do you think will happen in Afghanistan? Do you know how proud and brave the women of Afghanistan are in that region? The Taliban won't have a leg to stand on, nor will the women in Saudi. As much of, they have these moderate reforms, they are very proud people. And they're not happy with being temporarily appeased while the older kind of guard, adapt themselves to the times. They want freedom now. The kinds of things they do outside of the norms are unbelievable. I lived in the UAE for 5 years. I have a lot of stories to tell you guys kind of off the record about Saudi women. The impact of this revolution is monumental for that region and for women's rights around the world. Every single dictator, every single autocrat in the world, Putin, Ping, other people, they'll be shaking in their boots if this is successful. So that's why it's important.
This is where all of their efforts are building towards: secular democratic government.
That's the first time I felt really hopeful. Winston.
Sousiant, Farinaz, thank you for sharing. As I listened to your voice, Sousiant, I could detect the level of pain from the level of oppression that you're just verbally trying to describe to us, like the oppression, the malice, the suffering your people are experiencing. I have worked with people, and I understand meaning cognitively and a bit emotionally as to what may be happening. What I'm curious of is I understand why they're trying to crush it down, to silence the youth. What do you believe the wave has started to a point that it's not stoppable, or is it still fragile?
It's a really good question. I want to believe that this is unstoppable today, but I remember 2009. I felt similar naivety, I would say, earlier in the thing. And I'm like very guarded at the moment around like the potential of this. But again, the scale of these protests and the like how young the people are that are actually doing stuff. Like Farinaz and I are probably watching similar videos. Like we're watching 9, 10-year-old girls in their classroom dancing to the new anthem that's coming out called Baraye, or they're showing the middle finger to the mandatory supreme leader photo that's in every single classroom and taking pictures of this with on Instagram and other places. Like the wholesale ideological rejection of this regime has happened. It's now in everyone's minds. Like, so I think that where I'm worried is that people lose hope inside because they feel they've been abandoned by those on the outside. I saw that happen in 2009, where there were 3, 4, 5 million people that were actively protesting and people risking their lives and bloggers sending out information and photojournalists and so all this sort of stuff. And what happened is after every successive event, after these like large protests that they'd organized, national strike and so on and so forth, the regime forces got more and more brutal. They just killed people like with no worry or care in mind at all. And so people started, and on the backside, like the governments that were around the world that could take stronger and stronger stances were sort of doing virtue signaling, you know, putting lights on parliament and, you know, writing press releases and all this like meaningless shit. And so what do they feel? For them, they feel they start doing a cost benefit analysis. Like, okay, no one has our back. We really need support. We need tools. We need technology. We need ammunition. We need money. We need something. We're up against Goliath here. And no one is really supporting us. Like, is it worth continuing? Is it worth risking our lives? I don't think we're there at all in terms of that kind of a precipice of like people doing this cost benefit. Right now, people are like, fuck yeah, we're going ahead. This is happening. You raided the university last night. We're all coming into the streets and honking our horns. The next morning, we're all protesting in our own universities. Like this is going on. So I think the way we can continue and help, and this is where, you know, I've been trying to be much more vocal on the news and whatnot, is Canada needs to take a very, very strong stance on this, much stronger than it has today. Sanctioning a few regime officials, nice, okay, cool. We need to get even stronger. And the strongest thing we can do, in my opinion, are 2 things. We can publicly call on all the other diplomats and friends in governments in the US, in the UK, and France to cancel the nuclear negotiations with Iran, writ large. No one comes back to the table until there's a secular democratic government in place. That's one demand Canada can make publicly, at least to put pressure on everybody else. The second thing they can do is, believe it or not, guys, the same people that all these people are fighting against have family members here in Canada and in BC and in Toronto. Like one of the vice presidents of Iran, this woman who's in charge of family affairs and women in particular, her son is here in BC building a tech company, and he came here on a startup visa. These people should be kicked out of Canada immediately. Their parents are complicit in the murder and the torture of innocent people. They shouldn't be here in some safe haven allowed to exist while they impose hypocrisy on everybody else. They want that hypocrisy, they go back home. Canada should be seizing their assets, or at least freezing their assets, and returning these people back to where they came from. We can't have we can't virtue signal and then create an environment for these people to escape out of there as well. These are things that I think that could be done that, again, add a sense of fuel. It breathes air into all those people that are risking their lives, saying, you know what, the rest of the world does care. They're actually doing something that matters while we're risking our life to bring about change in this region.
Very actionable and creative and outside the box thinking for actually how to stop that. I almost want to just pause and turn the floor over to Farinaz and ask what you think, like actionable items that could fuel or help or support this movement from your perspective. And I'll get to you, Daniel.
Everything Soushiant said is accurate and to the point, especially because a lot of these government officials, the Islamic regime's head of every sector has a child or a family member, a very close family member residing in Canada. They have assets in Canada, and they, over the past 9 days, 300 of them have traveled to Canada. And that just shows that Canada is giving them safe passage, is giving them safety, where innocent lives are being taken. And as a Canadian citizen, I am embarrassed. I moved to this country, I immigrated in hopes of freedom and fair leadership. And this is, it's the only difference I would say between the Islamic regime in Iran and this is that they are just wrapping everything up in a nice I'm sorry paper and giving it to us. So yes, absolutely, everything that Soushiant just touched on is accurate. There needs to be action. Lighting Christmas lights on the parliament is not an actionable thing. Of course, it's beautiful. The difference between 2009 and today's protests is that also all over the world there being protests and rallies, and it's bringing more light to the situation where in 2009 the internet was shut down and nobody knew what was happening, but also of course less provinces were involved, and now there's more. And now the difference also is in 2022 there are more highly educated young people currently living in Iran who, if they succeed in this, can of course call for a new republic, a democratic government, and they are all highly educated. I can't tell you how many of these younger generation I know that moved elsewhere to Europe, to the States, to Canada to study, and yet they moved back. They moved back to Iran in hopes of creating a better country, and they are there. They want to make a change. So if this succeeds, they can hopefully that's our prayer, that they can hopefully change something. But everything Soushiant said is what has to take place in order for basically that Islamic regime to feel threatened, at least.
Yeah, I agree. I'll keep you up and ask the next question. Would you yourself personally risk your life if you were in Iran today to fight?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, you too,
For
Soushiant?
sure. For sure.
Even though you've got 2 little girls, you gotta, and where does that just you just have to step in, the values become more important. Like, talk me through that, like,
especially because we have girls, like, if I don't, what are they going to grow up in? What kind of world will they grow up in? Right? What's the point of having them if you have to raise them in a jail?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I would, Max.
Yeah. I thought that was going to be the answer.
Raise them in a free world.
Yeah. Daniel, you had a question, and then we'll go to Gabe, and I'll finish with one other question before we jump into breakout rooms. Daniel.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, thanks so much, Farinaz and Soushiant, for sharing. This has been very eye-opening. I tried to come here with as much humility as I can, knowing that I don't have all the information about this conflict at all. Like, my perspective is super narrow. So yeah, I just mostly wanted to take in from you. But I am wondering now. I have a few questions, but I'll try to be brief just so we can move on. How much communication do you have with people in Iran? Because from what I understand, yeah, the government has been limiting some internet access, but then Elon Musk came in with the Starlink stuff. So how clear is the communication from the outside to people there? And how can that be used as a positive? And the second one was more a comment. I don't know how you feel, but with situations like this, when people are actually getting harmed and you get such big emotional reactions, sometimes the hardest thing to actually do is to take a few breaths and slow down and try to look at the wider picture. I know it can be super hard, but doing that, which different paths could you see this turning into from what is going on? So yeah, hopefully my questions are clear and they lead to something useful. Thanks so much for sharing, and thanks so much, Maxine, for providing this safe space.
Who wants to go first? Farinaz, do you want to start? How easy is it to communicate? Oh, did she lose the sound? Oh, there we go.
Just one thing that I need to shed light on is what Elon Musk allude to with his internet. Needs satellites, needs hardware. So even if he really wants to provide internet without his specific hardware, which, by the way, all the Iranians, well, most Iranians outside of the country asked for a link in order to donate for those hardware to be provided to the Iranian people in Iran, and that never was even replied to. And then Islamic regime is very powerful. They're not going to allow that hardware to enter the soil. And so people don't have his internet. What people have is these many like intermittent times of internet connection where they immediately send off messages or short videos to everybody they know, or people with larger platforms or news channels. And that's it. That's how they are basically communicating. Apple, for example, has opened FaceTime. So if anybody has an Apple device in Iran, you can contact them. So I've been in contact with my family, and thankfully they're safe. And I know a lot of other people that do that. But basically, that's it.
I still can't understand a government shutting off the internet. I didn't know that was allowed, to happen, or possible to stop that line of communication from from people I just didn't even know until that happened, or ever something I've ever had to deal with. My government not allowing me to communicate with the outside world. That really.
I've heard of this from North Korea too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just pretty intense.
And China.
Away, and China. Yeah. Fairness, do you have any, or Sousiant, did you have anything to add?
I think, that's a really good clarification. It was, again, a bit of virtue signaling by Elon Musk. The first shipment of Starlinks that have gone to Iran were confiscated in Kurdistan. Farinaz, if you didn't hear about this already. So we're far from internet being there. I'm communicating regularly. I have a very close friend who I'm doing voice notes over Instagram with. My cousins, 3, 4 of them that have children in the universities and I grew up with, I'm communicating with them on a regular basis, and then getting news feeds from different people. So what I found is that there was a period of time where there was no communication. There was like 3, 4 days or so, that like last week, where there's nothing, and then they all kind of came back in intermittent kind of chunks. They would find a bit of internet and then they would send whatever they could, voice notes, images, whatever. But what I'm also hearing is that the regime forces are targeting anyone that has a phone in the streets. So most of like my friend in particular, who's going out every night and doing things, he's not taking his phone with him at all. He's leaving his phone at home in case he gets arrested or in case he gets captured. They won't be able to see everything he's done so far, because those are real grounds for murder and all that sort of stuff. So the question, I think the bigger question you asked was a really, really important one. I'm sure Farinaz feels the same way, same with other community members. Like when we see what's going on, we're like impatiently trying to do something. We're calling each other. We're trying to have meetings. We're trying to like coordinate and brainstorm, and we're calling members of parliament. We're calling the news. We're writing op-eds. We're busying ourselves, but this is not the most productive thing to do right now. I think the most productive thing to do right now is begin thinking about what happens on day one after the revolution. What should happen after day one, after the revolution? What is the framework to get us to not look like Libya, not look like Iraq, not look like the earlier days of Tunisia? We need to begin coordinating ourselves in the different cities around the world as key diaspora members, so that we all are on the same page about what is the basic principle that we want to happen in Iran, and what are the ways in which we're going to leverage our contacts to get that same message out there. Secondly, if this regime does fall, like let's look at the 3, 4 scenarios under which it would dissipate, like they'd leave the country or the army intervenes. Okay, then what? Like, is there going to be an interim election? Who will be the interim government? What will be that process? Will we invite the UN to be a peacekeeping force or a regulatory force? Like, let's start preparing all of those things now to demonstrate and symbolize to people this is inevitable. This is going to happen. I think this is the most important thing to do. But not all of us can do those things. I think some of us need to organize the protests, and they're really good at them, and they need to sustain this kind of attention and movement. Some people need to write op-eds, and some people need to work on this like grand plan of like, what's the framework for transition?
I love that. So it's inevitable. We're already planning when the regime falls, how we're coordinating. I think that's really powerful to get the minds thinking of that. That's really, really, really powerful. How, Gabe, I'm going to come to you in a sec. Actually, I'll jump in. I'll ask you next, and then I'll wrap it up with one last question that we can go into our breakout sessions with. Jump in. Go ahead.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you both for sharing so openly and honestly. I mean, as a first-gen Canadian with parents from Europe, I heard some stories of World War II, but I mean, I've lived a relatively cush life, and we all have our hardships, but nothing like that. So thank you for being so open and honest, and it's very eye-opening. The questions for you are related to news, and what you've shared already, I think, has answered part of it, but I'll ask anyway. It's how do we keep this fresh in the minds? Because watching news cycles in North America, things seem to very quickly get forgotten. We don't have to look too far into what's going on in Ukraine. It disappeared for a while. It kind of popped back up. It disappears, but it gets forgotten into the daily mundane of North American life. And then secondly, how do we remain informed? Because there are news outlets that, I mean, everyone has a bit of a slant, and they have an idea of what's going to sell advertising space for them, kind of thing. So where do we get more accurate news about what's going on, and how do we remain properly informed and not what kind of the slant as people want? Thank you.
Diana, do you mind if I jump in on this?
Please do.
Okay. I think that the news has been actually very horrific and delayed in covering a lot of the stuff that's been going on. We had 500 million people in the streets throughout the world, over 71 different countries. And sorry, not 5, sorry, 500,000 people, 500,000 people in these different cities. And not a single article in CNN, BBC, Washington Post, you name it. We had 30,000 people in Vancouver alone on Saturday, covering the streets from Stanley Park to the art gallery on both sides of the street. Did you see a single article in CBC or CTV or anything? So don't like rely on the news. Add a few Iranian friends to your social media calendar or diet or whatever, and follow them. And please, if any of this stuff resonates with you, and no pushing an agenda or obligating you to become our voice or anything. If any of this resonates with you, understand that your voice as a white Anglo-Saxon Canadian is much more important than my voice in this country. Much more important than Farinaz's voice. Because at the moment, politicians and decision makers believe this is a local issue for some minority groups. Some of them still think like this. When they see someone like Max, someone like you, someone like Max's mother posting about Iran or about freedom or whatever, or someone with a last name like Jones or McDonald or whatever, they're going to take this much more seriously than us. So if any of this resonates with you, please add some friends to your social media accounts. Instagram is where a lot of stuff is happening. Facebook, much less. TikTok, if any of you are really, really young, there you can go there, and share and repost and attribute to people. Like those are really simple things that you could do that continue giving fuel to this movement.
That's excellent and very achievable. So if Sousiant and Farinaz want to post their Instagram, I know you did, Sousiant, Farinaz, if you do too, we can at least add 2 feeds to our social media feed. Farinaz, did you want to add anything to that? Good. Yeah or no?
No, Sousiant is on point. I added my my Instagram on the chat.
Farinaz,
thank you, Sousiant.
Farinaz, you sent that directly to me, not to everyone.
Oh, sorry.
Perfect. Okay, so action item, we'll all add Sousiant and Farinaz so our feeds, we can stay on top of this. I'll also send a recording of this session. I'm going to be posting it on my LinkedIn if you feel like you want to share it. I think there was a lot shared today. I invite you to do that as well. If you just want to talk about that you contributed or learned about what was going on, and if your community wants to do that, to check out this video. Okay, so I am going to take 10 minutes to kind of close off a little bit. I'm going to break us into a quick breakout room for 10 minutes. I want you to go into the breakout room and just reflect on, repeat some of the things you learned, share some of the feelings you had, confirm some of the action items you might take, and we'll come back and then officially kind of close off the event and thank Farinaz and Sousiant for sharing their hearts and their souls with us this evening. So I'll do breakout rooms of 3 and we'll be back in here in 8 minutes.
Maxine, I have to leave to work in 10 minutes.
You can go, Farinaz. Okay, you know what? I can just pause and if that's the case, how are you doing, Sousiant? Yeah, you're good.
I have 10 minutes that I could stay on for. Yeah.
Okay. Are we all okay for another 10? Hands up. Yeah. Farinaz, if you have to go, I just want to take a minute to just extremely grateful for you showing up today and sharing so much with us. You completely changed my perspective and mindset and added so much more information than I had before. And again, we had this conversation right before we jumped on, but just sitting in your space for this long was an experience that I won't forget.
Thank you, Maxine, and also to everybody who listened. And I'm so grateful, especially to Sousiant, you're amazing. What you like being actionable and having actionable items in mind and proceeding with that is what I needed from this hour. And that's what I got. So I'm extremely grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Farinaz. We'll see you soon.
See you. Bye.
Okay, for the rest of us, I'll do it. Yeah, quick breakout room just to recap what you said, share with the room, and then we'll come back and close. That sound okay? Okay, I will assign 18, 6. We'll go like that.
The real crew is still here.
The real crew. Well, it was an hour and a half. It was we usually do these for 60 minutes. And I was like, that's just not going to be enough time for today. So I changed it last minute. So go share, recount again, remember, and I'll see you back here in 8 minutes. All right. Cool. Welcome back. Really quickly, anything happen in your room that you want to share? Anyone? William, you haven't said anything. And then Rena.
I think I talked too much during the session. I was lucky enough to be in a session with Sousiant, so I thank you if you made that pick for me.
Algorithm.
You know, we had just a quick chat, unfortunately fairly serious about, you know, when we look at Iran, you know, it seems so far away across the world, but some of the things that are happening in our backyard scare me in terms of, you know, women losing their rights here in North America. And I think that, you know, we've got to be careful as well. This, you know, as we look at Iran, we need to think this isn't just about Iran. This is about all of us.
Yes. Yes. It is a revolution for women of all around the world. And I loved what Sousiant said is like, no, it's got to be inevitable in our minds that it's not going to be this way anymore. Like this is too strong. And inevitably we need to figure out what it's going to be like when the dream of equal representation and you know, equal rights is upon us. And I think the more we hold that in our mind, the more we can imagine what that's like. And then we don't accept anything less than. I loved that comment. Anyone? Yeah. Rena, is that a hand?
Yeah. I was just going to just quickly say that Robin and I agreed that we're never going to look at or hear about this issue the same after having spent this last 90 minutes with you all. And so I really, really thank you for that. And I totally agree. And I was just really fascinated, and not fascinated, it's not the right word. Really, it's just very thought-provoking to realize like this isn't just about Iran. I mean, obviously, even if it were just about Iran, it wouldn't matter. I'm so care about it. But it really, like the ripple effects it's going to have on other countries all over the world. It's really important to keep that in mind. And yeah, appreciate understanding that our voices of non-Iranians are really important.
Love it. I might wrap on that. I feel the same. I'll never, ever look at or read an article the same ever again. You know, I just will have, I just learned so much today that I'm just going to go sit and meditate on it. And I'm so grateful to have been in the room with you guys live, to be at that resonance at the same time, and to have Sousiant and Farinaz, with us, holding that space for us. So as promised, a quick call to action. I always end my events with a call to action. And that is, well, number one, to follow Sousiant's advice, fill your social media feeds with Iranians. Bring that perspective into the feeds that you look at every day, the people's perspective. Imagine in your mind, again, the inevitable of this uprising being successful and the regime vacating, and what a win that would be for society. Put some time into consciously imagining that. And then I just wanted to pass on like the understanding one another's perspective and how far and deep it goes. My call to action always, because my mission is to facilitate more conversation, is feel free, again, when you're feeling the call to connect with another human being on a deep level, because there's so many things going on in the world, is head to the marketplace, browse a brain, book a brain, and experience them and give them an opportunity and sit in their story, just like we got to do as a group today, and walk away forever changed, with a forever different, upgraded opinion or perspective about the world. And I really like how you said it to me, Alex, a really beautiful uprising. I agree. It's like very painful and it hurt my heart today, but it feels so empowering too, that these women are so brave, and the younger generation isn't wanting it done in the old ways. I think that's just like very exciting. Again, we're on a mission to facilitate 1 million conversations, and this evening was 1 times the 17 that we just had. So thank you for contributing to that mission. And our next event will be on November 2nd at 11 a.m. And I think what we're going to do for that event is actually talk about death, dying, and mortality with Rena and her group, who we just onboarded. Another conversation that we don't think has enough light, and maybe actually complementary to this as well, to realize how precious life is, and how much, immediate response to fight for your values. So thank you so much for your energy and attention today. Love to you all. And I hope to see you guys all soon. Sousiant, a special thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay. Love you guys. See you soon.
Thanks a lot, Max.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Big hug.
Thank
Ciao.
you.